Chapter 15. Quest, A New Life. Try Not to Die Edition. You have been placed into the world of fate/stay night after your untimely death. Figure out the ways of the world and survive, and maybe even get yourself some magic on the way. This is a new chance at life, and you better not mess it up. Requirements: reach level 50 without dying. Reward: randomized skill books, plus 20 to all attributes, yen failure, death. I've been confused about something. This right here is the first quest I've ever gotten since my rebirth into the Nasuverse, and the requirements need me to reach level 50 without dying. But I've died before, right? I've gotten my head lobbed off by Zerkerlot back in Alea's cage. So why hasn't this quest disappeared yet? Maybe, system, being lenient on me. Nah, she helps me a bunch, but she's been rather fair, so I don't think that's it. Could the definition of death be different to the gamer, then? I mean, I'm only looking at death as my body shutting down. Maybe death is when I lose all sense of consciousness and self. When my soul finally passes on, perhaps. Gah, my head hurts, and I don't need a headache so early in the morning. Okay, that conundrum aside, welcome back. A day's passed, and after a good night's sleep, my mental energy's back at maximum. Which is important, because I feel like I almost cracked and went insane after the stupidity that is my training montage. It involved me taking off my armor, forbidding myself from using any weapons, not allowing myself to use the same skills in succession, and only allowing myself to use prana rocket propulsions to boost my speed and not for flight. The slime and ghoul dungeon didn't pose much of a threat. The desolate dunes ID I somehow missed was mostly interesting, since it was the first time I ever went there, and the goblin ID was Mediasir. The difficulty jumped when I reached the forest dungeon, however, because despite it having a recommended level of 22, the many status effects the monster gave was, yikes. I mean, poison, blindness, nausea, and paralysis all at once, with a touch of weakening as well. Yeah, not experiencing that ever again. Then, the Hearth of Daedrin was hell. It was just hell. Without my armor giving me stats and my staff to boost my attacks, the dragons there were a lot tougher to take down, and I could barely hold my ground against some of the bulkier dragons. The Reeve Jungles came next. You know, the one I used back in Mickey City. The one with bloated flies and stuff. Yeah, that one was fucking brutal, I tell you. I have no idea why I thought it was easy back then, but it's basically the forest dungeon, on steroids, and added with the toughness from the Hearth of Daedrin. I don't know if Fuyuki City just makes everything harder or if I'm just misremembering things, but instead of bloatflies there were frogs, giant caterpillars, giant wasps, and more insects than I bothered to count. The status effects they gave weren't as bad as they could be, since I've gathered some resistance skills from the forest dungeon, but the sheer damage their attacks did were more terrifying, with a single hot knocking down round a third of my HP pool. Puts into perspective just how crap my vitality was. And, of course, the last ID I went to was Uriel, and since I didn't want to go around the place using the water brigda, I allowed myself to fly using the rocket propulsions. Still, with enemies around 20 to 30 levels above me, the experience was pure torture, especially against monsters that are fast or resilient. Like, at one point, my HP dropped to below 1000, and thought I was going to die. Thankfully, I knocked the monster off the island, and while I can fly, it couldn't. Anyways, after coming back and avoiding several probing questions from Shiro and Gareth over the many traces of injuries, I forcefully knocked myself out and slept through the night with Gareth and Drake guarding the Einsburn mansion in case any outsiders happened to come. Thankfully, nothing happened at night, but Shiro and I could physically feel something foul in the air, so I asked my two servants to go and scout the city together. Which brings us to now, with me sitting at the roof of the Einsburn mansion, with a nice cup of steaming tea in my hands, waiting for Kiritsugu to wake up. From what I've seen with my mystic eyes, he's back at full health and should wake up in an hour or so. That's good and all, but what then? How should I break it to him that the holy grail he's been seeking is a fake? I mean, this is Amiya Kiritsugu we're talking about here. The Magus killer, foster father of Amiya Shiro, and the template for assassin Emiya. He's dedicated most of his past decade to this moment, and to suddenly say that everything he's been doing is useless? I can't imagine how he'd feel. Well, I'm putting all that stuff away for later. There's no use in pondering endlessly, and I might as well use this time for something more productive, no? So here you go. Name, Tsunaka Hanami. Age, 17. Sex, female, human. Class, frowny face caster. Level 51 EXP 2061 for 24/100 000000. HP 125460/125460 2091 HP/min. MP 107865/107865 393.55 MP/min. Stamina 100%, 123% per hour. Strength 357 plus 73 x2. Vitality 246 x2. Dexterity 263.3 plus 91.5. Intelligence 547 plus 254.5. Wisdom 463 plus 168. Luck 100.4. Stat points 50. Money 123 for 22,045, 012 yen. Here it is, my current status, though it's not counting the stat bonuses from the Reaver set I'm currently wearing. Looks pretty damn impressive, doesn't it? I mean, damn, over 500 in intelligence. Add in the bonus from my armor and, also Malsera, and, phew, I don't even have words for it. The most important thing out of all this is that nice new HP pool I got, which is a product of both me getting to level 51 and my vitality being 206. Natural body LV max, perfection in body structure, creating the absolute pinnacle of natural human strength. Thankfully, you won't suddenly become buff from using this, but your strength will increase many folds, and you will become the prime example of the pinnacle of human strength. Doubles, natural, strength and vitality. And that's thanks to this bad boy right here. On paper it already sounds strong, but when applied, it just feels incredible. I've never felt so alive, for a lack of a better term. My body feels so refreshed. Not only that, but I can also see some lean yet firm muscles showing itself on my body, which is nice. I've never had so much muscles in my life, so it's quite weird for me. Now, back to the first thing this chapter started with. Quest, a new life. Try not to die edition. Requirements, reach level 50 without dying. Yeah, this. Now that I've reached level 50, I've completed it. I actually got the rewards back in Uriel, but I was a bit too delirious to care and just stuffed the items I got into my inventory. Well, now that I'm sober again, let's check them out, shall we? Putting aside the nice plus 20 to all my stats and the 5 billion yen I received from it, I seem to have received several new skill books as a reward. It didn't specify how many skill books it was going to give me though, so I'm just sifting through my inventory to find it. Just, give me a moment. Found it. Bundle of skill books, a pack of books tightly wrapped in a nice bundle by a small red ribbon. There also seems to be a sticky note on it, though only a smiley face is drawn on it. Once opened, give 6 to 12 skill books of rank B- or higher. The image icon was different from normal skill books, so it took me a while to find it amidst my sea of items, but, still, 6 to 12 skill books, all above, rank B-. It's awesome, mind you. The 6 is great already, but 12 is a direct double from that. And it's all down to luck, huh? Well, here goes. Gulping down my hesitation, I unlock the bundle and wait as a small animation plays, before. EY. 10 skill books. It's not 12, but that's 4 books above the minimum. Not bad. Guess that 100 luck is paying off, huh? Now, I would go and explain it now, but I think it'll eat up too much time and space. Besides, I think I can save the exposition for the author's notes on the bottom, right? Just don't leave so quickly. Anyways, from the quick skim I did on the skill books, none of them provided instant benefits anyways, so there's no point in learning skills I don't have confidence in just yet. Now there's another thing I want to review quickly. Attribute Enchant, Holy LV Max. By imbuing the essence of your magic with holy energy, you can now enchant any object or attack you are close to. Due to the source of this skill, EXP gain is tripled. Attacks enhanced with this skill deals 1100% damage to unholy and demonic enemies, 100 plus level *10, possible evolution. Consult at the compendium. And it's this right here, specifically that final line on the bottom there. You see, I finally managed to max out this skill in Uriel, and I've been wondering just what this skill could evolve into. Besides, it's going to be the first time I'm using the other facilities in my Soul Forge, so it's quite exciting. So, finishing the last of my tea, I drop the cup into my inventory and stand up. My Create ID brims to life and the snowy world around me fades, replaced by a starry dark room I've gotten quite familiar with. This time however, instead of heading for the forge, I walk over to the strange black lectern, with a glowing book resting atop it. Compendium, a strange tome of power, holding the histories of all that has existed. Long had it wandered aimlessly in the colorless void, until it binded itself to you. Now, its services are yours. Skill evolution, skill splicing, skill sealing. As I remember, the evolution and splicing are still there, though that skill sealing is a new addition. Why would I need to seal a skill anyways? Can skills even harm me? Well, now that I've asked the question, most likely. Anyways. Possible evolutions, attribute enchant, holy LV max. Yep, there it is. Alright, let's see. Conjuring possible evolutions, taking into account current skills, finished. You may now pick one of 3 choices, Dash, World Saint, Morningstar, Archangel. Okay. Even without opening their description, I can feel the potential of each skill, and, just, damn. Alright, let's see what each skill is, shall we? World Saint, the tangibility of hope is a short one, but not one to be dismissed. The strength of the heart may fall, but the world together is indestructible. The strength is yours. The world's strength is yours. Now, what might you do? Attacks enhanced with this skill deals 1500% damage to unholy and demonic enemies. You can now discern the poor, allowing you to understand and sympathize with those who live. You gain a new stat called Faith Power, or FP. It is gained by gathering the faith of those who believe in you. It can act as a substitute to both HP and MP, but perhaps there may be more. Your heart will never be swayed, your will and mind will never break. Warning. Once you take this skill, your presence will become extremely harmful to any demons and undead. Jesus. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. The bonus in damage is nice, the 2 extra lines on the bottom's great, and having discernment of the poor is a nice boon too, but that FP though, just knowing it can substitute HP and MP is big news already, and then it says that there might be more secrets hidden. Let's just move on before I get too tempted by it. Morningstar, for he is the one who lives at the sign of the morning star. The birth of the universe is perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Its origin and workings unknown, and the figure who led such an event never known. But that matters not to you, for the light of the distant star fills you with power. The burning heat of the sun swirls in your fingers. Let the dawn begin. Attacks enhanced with this skill deals 1500% damage to unholy and demonic enemies. You gain intimate knowledge of the workings of the stars. Any skills related to the star attribute will have its strength increased by plus 100% and gain experience thrice as fast. You can control gravity. Strength and reach depends on the amount of MP used. Warning. Once you take this skill, your presence will become extremely harmful to any demons and undead. Oh god, this one's so good too. Just that, unlike the previous one, this one's more focused on the more physical aspects instead of mystical. But in trade for the sweet FP, this one gives me control over gravity, and also boosts any skills related to stars. So, overall, I don't know which one is better. Now, here comes our final contestant. Archangel, from the dawn of time, past when God had sent his creations to roam the earth, he created angels, beings who guarded the throes of heaven. And of those angels, there are those who stand above them all, who act as the extensions of the Lord. And now, their strength flows within you. Attacks enhanced with this skill deals 1500% damage to unholy and demonic enemies. Grants you access to divine skills. Allows you to temporarily become an archangel. Costs 10,000 MP every minute. Any skills related to the holy attribute will have its strength increased by plus 100% and gain experience thrice as fast. You now passively control light. Reach and intensity of the light depends on MP used. Warning. Once you take this skill, your presence will become extremely harmful to any demons and undead. Ah shit, this one's cool too. Of course, there's that line of unknown text on the bottom, and I don't know what transforming into an archangel does to me, but allowing me to use divine skills is already a great boon. Which now brings me to the pressing problem, which one to choose. This will very well dictate the progression of my skills, so I can't just pick one willy-nilly. But, honestly, no matter how much I try weighing the pros and cons of each choice, my mind always diverts back to that Morningstar. Not only does the name sound cool, having control over gravity is just too powerful to ignore. Gravity isn't simply the force pulling us down to Earth after all. It's one of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, one of the things keeping our universe intact. And to have control over that? Furthermore, it says that I'll gain intimate knowledge of the workings of the stars, which means that I'll probably gain even more knowledge of the universe, which then means that it'll give me even more ideas on what I can use my gravity powers for. I mean, being able to control gravity's already cool enough, but I might even be able to create a miniature sun or something, though I don't know how far my control over gravity will go. So, despite the other two skills being awesome in their own rights, I'm going with Morningstar. You have chosen Morningstar. Are you sure? Y/N. With firm determination, I tap, yes. And my mind exploded. Hey, that's hell you're walking into. He turns around to face the man. His steel eyes bores into his, still and unchanging despite the hell they stand in. What? He asks, surprised to see another individual suddenly appear in this forsaken hellscape. There are still people waiting for you. You remain redeemable. The man speaks. Cast away your dream before it's too late. Before he could ask, the man suddenly crosses the gap between them, and he feels the cold touch of tempered steel pressed against his neck. Lest tragedy strike again. Kiritsugu wakes. It isn't a loud affair, a trait he'd learned to have after the countless nightmares that plagued his dreams, but the quaking fear he remembered from that hell he saw is still fresh on his mind, and it takes him a moment to finally calm himself. Kiritsugu. IRI. Slowly, he rises from the bed before being crushed by a hug from his wife. His mind short-circuits for a moment, wondering what happened to cause IRI such distress, and then he remembers. He remembers that searing pain, that slow decay he felt on his body as he struggled through the sleepless nights. He remembers that last moment of consciousness, when he felt his chest constrict and his lungs burn, as if a rod of hot iron had been inserted into it. He remembered hearing their cries of worry before he fell asleep and woke to that burning city. How long? He manages to ask, doing his best to quickly rebuild his usual stoic mask. It's been 2 days. Mia says for the crying woman, her monotone slightly broken by the smile of relief she has. By her side, a boy with auburn hair stands, staring at him with the same relief as. Who are you? The boy freezes up, clearly shocked that he'd be put under such attention so quickly after Kiritsugu's recovery. He then coughs, and WTH a slightly grimace, he begins, I'm Dash. But the door suddenly opens, and in comes another unfamiliar individual. This time, it's a girl, her hair a light brown and her eyes green. She looks completely normal, but her presence was far from that. It reminds him of the powerful magi in the clock tower, those that could flatten most with just their presence alone. An individual that commanded power. Sorry for taking so long. She says as she combs her hair with a brush she brought out from somewhere. The shower froze halfway, so I needed to do some extreme measures. It's fine. The boy says with a wry smile, before he turns back to Kiritsugu, now looking at him with that same odd expression as before. The girl quickly finishes her combing and walks towards him, before stopping next to the boy. You're probably confused on what's happening, but I'll do my best to explain. Right, okay. My name's Tsunaka Hanami, though you can just call me Hanami. She gives a playful poke at the boy, smiling as she does. Is Amiya Shiro, my partner. And I know you have questions, but save all your questions for later. Kiritsugu opens his mouth in protest, before he feels Iri place a comforting hand on his shoulder. He soon relents, leaning back into the bed and nodding. Good. Alright, I'll start simple. Simply put, you dropped into your coma because of the Grail Dash, well, what's inside the Grail to be exact. Immediately, questions begin to spring up in his mind, but Hanami then continues. Engra Mainyu, the Persian god of darkness, also known as the Avenger of the Third Holy Grail War, is currently living inside the Grail and is using its wish-granting mechanism to try and destroy the world. Seeing you as a potential threat, it infected you with its taint. When and how that happened, I don't know, but it's probably when you first summoned Saber over there and the effects began to grow when you entered Fuyuki. Though that's just speculation, so don't quote me on that. And to that, I guess I'll have to apologize. She suddenly says as she bows. It shocks him somewhat, to see such a powerful figure bow her head so easily. In fact, everyone else looks surprised, even her partner, but he soon follows her and bows as well. The reason why Engra Mainyu's so aggressive is because of our failure from the future. The future? He accidentally asks, and Hanami smiles. Yep. I guess it's about time we introduce ourselves. We're the only survivors of the Fifth Holy Grail War, the war that will happen 10 years from now, after this war ended in a catastrophe that burnt down the entirety of Fuyuki City. Kiritsugu remembers his dream, that burning and smoldering city, where the skies are covered by thick smoke and a hole is torn open in the sky, with blackened mud pouring down. Realization kicks in, and he makes sense of what that place had been. Hey, that's hell you're walking into. We were on the verge of destroying the Grail, but... She quickly glances to the boy by her side, and Shiro quickly continues. I noticed the Grail breaking down, but I guess even that wasn't enough to kill Ingramenu. Somehow, it managed to activate the Grail and send itself back to the Fourth War, though it brought us as well. Hanami nods before turning to him. All right then, any questions? Many. He says dryly, though mostly because he's still taking everything in. Don't worry, we have all day. She says as she drinks some tea from the bottle she has in her hands. Where does she keep getting those things? Kiritsugu takes a moment, sighs, and turns to the boy. Why are you an Amiya? You adopted me after the fire. I was dying back then, but you saved me by placing Avalon into me. He answers, though the reply brings up more questions. I had Avalon back then. That's where things get weird. Hanami frowns slightly as she speaks. Back then, you had Avalon inside you because you were fighting against Kirai Kotamine, a powerful executor of the church and the master of assassin, but, from what I've seen, the person known as Kirai was never born. Not only that, but the master of Berserker, Kariya Matul, died several years back. She scratches the back of her head as she frowns. It seems that when we were sent back, things became different. I see. That was a lot to take in. It could all be fabrications, but the expressions they held were far too genuine for the tale to have been made up. How did you heal me? Well, the process is a bit long, but it's basically me purifying the taint inside you and Shiro using Avalon's ability to heal you as I do my work. She swiftly takes another sip from her bottle. Any other questions? Is the Grail a lie? Hanami stares at him, pondering over the question, before shrugging. Well, yes, but not quite. Technically, Engra's currently hijacking the Grail, but if we do manage to kill him and purify the Grail, it should work like normal. So, anything else you want to ask? Kiritsugu takes a deep breath. I still have many, but I'll save it for later. His head is still swarming with all the bombs the girl had just dropped on him. The Grail being corrupted by a god of darkness? 2 survivors from the 5th Grail War being sent to the past. The 4th Grail War ending in the destruction of Fuyuki, and him adopting a child he'd implanted Avalon into? It all sounds like some sort of a child's make-do fantasy, but the visions he saw in his dreams matched their descriptions too perfectly to be disregarded. Alright, good. She looks away for a moment. It's, 2 past noon right now, but you might as well have some lunch, since, you know, you haven't eaten for 2 days and stuff. You don't mind cooking, right, Shiro? Huh? Shiro blinks, stunned. Yeah, sure. Good. I'll be off for now then. See you later. And with her piece said, the air around Hanami seems to bend, and she suddenly disappears, leaving behind a very confused crowd. Shiro can only sigh before leaving the room, heading towards the kitchen to cook up some hamburger steaks for Kiritsugu to eat. Wah, that went better than I thought. I mean, Kiritsugu basically glaring at me during the entire explanation was really tense, and I really thought that he was going to continue grilling me with his questions. But he didn't. Heck, he even followed what I said and left the questions after the explanation. Though he probably didn't ask more because he was tired. He did seem like he was holding back a migraine or something. Anyways. I'm currently inside an empty ID to test out my new Morningstar. I actually wanted to do it earlier, but I felt Kiritsugu beginning to wake up, so I just quickly took a shower to make myself presentable and went off to Kiritsugu. Now though, that's done, and it's time for experimentation. First. After waking up from that knowledge-induced knockout, I sifted through all the information that was just crammed into my head. And, as expected, it gave me a whole bunch of knowledge of the universe, both how it works physically and the mystical symbols and powers the star holds. It didn't tell me how the universe started though, which makes sense, since I'll literally die at that point. I mean, learning about molecular bonds and quantum mechanics is killing me enough. That aside, I've got a whole bunch of ideas I want to test out with my new gravity powers, all of which are extremely volatile and might cause harm, both to me and anything in my vicinity, which is why I'm here. Now, let's begin slow. W.O. Gently, the effects of Earth's gravity vanish, and I begin to float up into the air. Gah, my stomach feels really weird, but aside from that nothing new here. Moving on. With some of the experience gained from using my prana propulsions, I begin to move, flying at moderate speeds while twisting and making sharp turns. Once again, nothing much is new here, except the discomfort in my stomach and the slight decrease in MP usage. Finally, when I've gathered enough confidence, I burst forward at high speeds, blitzing through the entirety of Fuyuki in a mere minute. Then, I turn, and cross the city again, this time flying just above the city to give myself a bit more of a challenge. Thankfully, I succeeded on not crashing into anything on both. Now, for the fun part. With flying out of the way, it's time to test out some of my new gravity-related ideas, and trust me, I have a lot. I start out simple enough, with me dragging and pushing rocks around, making them fly through the air and do all sorts of complicated aerial maneuvers. That was easy enough, so I begin to increase the size of the item. I begin pulling trees up, then the dirt beneath it. After that I begin lifting some of the empty buildings, starting from simple houses to large office buildings. Sadly, lifting something the size of a skyscraper seems to be my current limit, though even then my control over it is sloppy. After that, I begin going the opposite, controlling smaller and smaller objects. Rounds of dust and microorganisms are easy enough, but something my head began to split when I tried moving a virus, so I stopped immediately. In conclusion, my gravity can move things as small as a bacteria and stuff as large as buildings. Overall, not bad. But this does mean that most of my more outlandish ideas are currently out of the picture. If I can't willingly move something the size of a virus with my gravity, then doing something like severing atomic bonds will probably kill me. Then again, my skill's only level 1, so who knows how far I can go. Still, this is all pretty damn awesome. Anyways, now that I've made myself familiar with my new powers, it's time to return to Uriel. Link, start. Transport confirmed, activating warp drive, initiating. After the shards of light fade from my view, I see myself standing in the center of Dun Stadia, right in front of the obelisk. Except, some things are different. The dirt paths that once twisted around the village are now made of clean polished stone. The houses are bigger and cleaner. The functional buildings are kitted out with more advanced tools. The haphazardly made farms from yesterday are now made into grids, with each grid growing different crops. The same goes with the apples trees, with most now planted in a nearby tree orchard. Overall, it's just cleaner. Also, the town's kinda empty, though that's mostly because everyone's having lunch in the new tavern at the east side of the town. That's not a bad thing though, since I'm not planning on staying here the entire time. Today, I want to find more settlements, especially the larger ones that had developed into large citadels. Not because I want anything special mind you, but just because I want to find them and see what they have in store. Which sounds easy enough, but the closest settlement to Dun Stadia is about 50,000 kilometers away. As it sounds, 50,000 kilometers is pretty damn far, but now I have Morningstar, and combined with my prana propulsions, 50,000 kilometers is nothing. If nothing wrong happens at least. Anyways, negating the gravity on me, I soar to the skies and towards this other settlement, speeding up more and more. The sound barrier is broken near instantly, and everything around me begins to warp. The combined forces of my prana propulsions and Morningstar sure is terrifying, especially because I can see the shockwaves being sent out behind me as I fly forward, and the chunks of islands being torn apart as I fly by. I wonder if this is what Superman feels like when he flies around the metropolis. Sure is trippy though. Feels like I'm going to activate warp drive or something. With the combined speed of the two skills, the 50,000 kilometers is quickly crossed, and I quickly slow myself down as I approach. And Lord Almighty, does this new place look cool. It's basically a large modern city built atop a large floating island, but most of the buildings are black, with glowing purple neon lights built along the walls, giving the entire place a cool, cyberpunk-like aesthetic. Not only that, but some of the inhabitants there also have robotic limbs and replacements, making the entire place even cooler. But just like any cyberpunk setting, there are several areas filled with people of the more outlandish side. Drug trades, red light districts, underground auctions, and other stuff like that. I'm not opposed to it, per se. I do understand the comforts those kinds of things can bring, but they're not something I'm comfortable with. With the exposition finished, I land myself on the edge of the island as discreetly as I can and make my way into the city. You have entered Vantaborea. Once I slip into the main street, that message appears, and along with it, the sky above me darkens, turning the sky into a perpetual starry night sky. It's obviously not real, only being a cosmetic placed on top of the barrier surrounding the island, but it does make the city feel more atmospheric, so props to the creator of this place. Now, let's explore. You know, we really should stop meeting at circumstances like this, Ryder. Francis laughs weakly, coughing slightly as she wipes the blood staining her lips. Sorry about that. She smirks as she looks towards the barren land in front of her. The forest that once had been here is all gone, uprooted, and burnt away. In her hands is an unconscious Gareth, whose armor is far too destroyed, with blood seeping out of the many wounds on her chest. Francis frowns. Still, she's a real piece of work over there. She glares at the woman standing in the center of the burnt forest, and Castor follows her gaze forward. There, standing with apathetic eyes, is a woman, one that looked so much like Saber, yet different. The clean armor is dark and black instead, with red lines running across it, as if the armor is cracking from the inside. The usual blonde hair is now a light, bleached yellow, and her eyes are covered by a black metallic piece. Her skin is far too pale, and the kingly presence Saber had is replaced by a thick miasma. That's expected, seeing as she's directly connected to the Grail. Castor analyses. Francis grimaces. Shit. She's running on infinite fuel while Francis and Gareth had to make use of the prana they took from Hanami before their connection was cut off by the damned bounded field this fake Saber created? No wonder she's this strong. It had been a fairly normal afternoon, you see. One moment, Francis and Gareth were traveling through the forest, with mostly Francis recalling the many tales she's experienced, then the skies suddenly turned black and most of the forest was suddenly burnt away by a falling pillar of dark purple light. They'd both gotten out unscathed, but Francis had to call her, Golden Hind, to shield them both, and the ship was torn completely in half by the strike, soaking up most of her prana and rendering her unable to battle for a while. But that short while was enough for the altered Saber to take them both down. Gareth had put up a valiant fight against her and Francis had provided backup, but the enemy was simply too strong, and her strikes were simply too big. They were overwhelmed in mere minutes. Master, please take Lancer and step back. The enemy is far stronger than any we've seen before. Castor says, and her master nods, cautiously taking Gareth off Francis' hands and taking several steps back. Idly, Francis notes that the boy is slightly taller and holds a much larger pool of prana. Can you stand, Ryder? Francis smirks, before standing up and bringing out her pair of guns. Then, a bottle of blue liquid is suddenly thrust into her hands, and Francis looks to Castor in confusion. She stares back. Your connection with your master is currently muddled, right? Take that as a temporary boost. Nice. Without hesitation, Francis downs the contents of the bottle, and instantly the lost prana she used returns. All weakness and fatigue disappears, as if they'd never even been there in the first place. The wounds remain however, though they present only a mild disturbance for the sea-hardened pirate. Alright, let's do this. Golden Hind. Upon her call, her beloved ship manifested, its cannons primed and aimed at their target. Let's. Bamboo Forest of the Lost. At Castor's command, shoots of bamboo sprout out from the ground and surround the ship, much like their previous encounter. Just this time, instead of running through, the bamboo seems to wrap around the ship protectively, forming a shield-like barrier for the ship. Let a rip dash. Please wait. Francis blinks. Huh. Castor ignores the confused stare of her temporary ally, and instead calls upon her magic once again. The dark atmosphere of the bounded field darkens, but the sky begins to glitter, as if 1,000 stars had suddenly shined upon them. That alternate Saber seems to not attack unless we move, so we must make as much preparations as possible. Francis blinks again and looks toward the unmoving Saber, this time truly observing her enemy. And, Castor is right, despite them clearly standing in her peripheral view, Saber Alter had not moved from her spot, her eyes watching them passively, unblinking. There seems to be no consciousness in her, almost like an automaton. Ha! Francis parrots again, this time in understanding. Castor nods, and pressing her palms down upon the Golden Hind's deck, she calls, Sovereign of the Moon. The ship rumbles and slowly, the ship begins to rise from the ground, untouched by the gravity that binds all things onto the earth, though still anchored by the many shoots of bamboo around the ship. Gravity negation, being a pirate, she doesn't quite understand the fundamental law of gravity, but she knows that her ship's suddenly able to fly around without the earth trying to pull it down, and she can't help but smirk at the prospect of flying her ship through the air. But Castor isn't done. Lunar technology, this time, Caster's magic heads into the cannons situated on the ship, and suddenly they shift. The previous gunpowder-powered cannons suddenly become electromagnetic railguns. Caster stands, and taking a deep breath, she calls out once more. Imperishable night. The sky morphs. A moon far larger than possible appears in the night sky, and stars blink all around it, surrounding the natural satellite. Of course, such a large moon is impossible, for it would have either crashed onto the Earth or left orbit long ago. It is but an illusion casted by strange lunar magic, but for those unknowing, an illusion may as well be reality. And in the world of magic, perceived reality is stronger than truth. The illusion forms a bounded field around them, easily taking over the previous field. A connection, though thin it may be, between Francis and her master is suddenly reformed. All the combined effects of Caster's magic suddenly grow in the wake of the unending night, drawing their strength from the night sky. Now, with her prana beginning to restore itself and her ship empowered beyond her wildest dreams, Francis grins. Let's go. Golden Wild Hunt. The new railguns on her ship power up, and they soon fire, rocking the ship back slightly from the sheer force of the combined firing. Instead of beams, a singular bolt of power is fired from each of her cannons, and they all fly, surpassing the speed of sound by over 10-folds. Saber Alter finally moves at the newly perceived threat, but despite her empowerment from Ingramenu, it's still very much too late. She manages to block 3 of the bolts, while a couple others make impact, tearing apart her armor and churning through the flesh under. Still, no vital organs were injured in the attack, but weakness begins to settle in from the blood loss, and Saber Alter locks her eyes at her target. She rears back her sword, miasma gathering at its edge, and she swings it at the ship, a beam of dark energy following. The beam travels fast, and in second it makes contact. Immediately, 2 rows of bamboo burn away, and another is torn. The final line holds for a second, before it too breaks, and the beam impacts the ship, tearing through the right side of the hull and disabling just under half of all the cannons on the ship. Still, half destroyed is still much better than complete annihilation. The ship fires again, but Saber Alter is ready this time, and she narrowly evades the railgun projectiles. Caster adds her own attacks, firing beams of condensed moonlight at the charging servant, but it too misses. Even then, some of the magic pellets that hit are brushed aside by the altered saber, her magic resistance, too powerful for normal magic to penetrate through. I'll hold her off. Hey, hold on. Caster ignores Francis' calls and climbs up atop the ship's bow. Most of my magic is useless against her, and ones powerful enough take much too long. Your cannons are primed, and they can easily tear through her. The choice is obvious, no? Saying that, Caster leaps off the ship. She notches her arrow, and infusing it with her magic, she lets it fly. Bamboo of the Lost. The arrow lands right before Saber Alter and a forest of magical bamboo sprouts out from the ground, stopping her movement, even if only for a moment. A couple swings of that corrupted Excalibur is enough to cleave a path, and Saber Alter swiftly continues her charge. Only to suddenly be hit by a giant pillar of light and be sent flying back, blood flying out of her wounds as she is flung. The attack did no damage, but it served to send Saber Alter back. As she stands, she glares at Caster, whose bow is already notched, with orbs of light floating around her. Go! The orbs of light fly forward, morphing into arrows. Saber Alter quickly brings up her sword to block them, only for the arrows to suddenly form into a chain and wrap around her, tying her down. The arrow Caster notched is fired as well, and infused with lunar magic, it flies faster than possible. Seeing that, Saber Alter tilts her head slightly, and the arrow hits right onto the piece covering her eye, shattering that instead of piercing the side of her head. The sickly golden eyes of the Tyrant King is shown. And suddenly all the chains around her body break from the energy gathering at her sword. She tightens her grip, and she swings, firing forward a burst of dark energy. Caster realizes a second too late, and the beam easily cuts right through the unfinished bamboo forest she haphazardly created, before making impact against Caster's chest. The beam cleaves right through her body, creating a cut right across her torso and burning away her flammable clothes and bow. But, even then, she smiles. Golden Wild Hunt. Francis' voice rings out behind her, and a sonic boom sounds as her railguns fire. Saber Alter quickly brings her sword up to block, but an orb of light flies forward and knocks the sword away. Seeing this, she glares at the downed Caster and at her smile, before an explosion sounds and everything goes white. Numbly, she looks down at her chest, and at the new hole created right where her magic core once was. Blood rushes out from her mouth, and faced with sudden weakness, Saber Alter crumples down onto the dirt. Francis smirks in victory, and so does Castor, though her body hurt far too much for her to cheer like her ally. Then, Saber Alter suddenly stands, and the cheer of victory quickly fades. Despite the many wounds in her body, Saber Alter stands, her pale golden eyes glowing with purpose. In growing horror, Castor watches as a new magic core begins to form in the hole where her old heart once was. Slowly, Saber Alter rears her sword back, gathering dark energy at its edge, and with a cry. The noble phantasm is stopped by a sudden weight on her body, forcing Saber Alter down onto the earth. The weight on her back strengthens, and the earth begins to crack as the altered servant begins to sink into the dirt under the massive unseen weight. Saber growls in pain, trying to push herself up, but the little strength she has left after her bout fails to fight this new force. Francis sighs in relief and smiles. "Took you long enough, Hanami." Sorry about that, I was a bit busy," Hanami says as she slowly descends onto the ship, and something's different. It's only then that the pirate notices something strange about her current master. With her connection with Hanami restored, it's only now that she's felt the new gargantuan source of prana brewing under that seemingly normal appearance. Not only that, but since when was Hanami able to fly without using those rocket things? Thoughts for later. Anyways, mind dash, huh? Francis looks back to the battlefield, but Saber Alter is long gone, with the only remnant of her presence being the large crack where she once was. Hanami looks confused for a moment, before her eyes flash blue, and her lips settle to a thin line. "So it's beginning to move, huh?" Hanami says ominously, much to Francis' confusion, but she then smiles. "Oh well." "What?" "Hey, Castor. You okay there?" At her call, Castor floats up onto the damaged ship, with her master by her side and an unconscious Gareth in her master's hand. "I am. No worries." And then they begin to chat, as if the previous battle that just occurred never happened in the first place. For the first time in her life, Francis finds herself rather taken aback by everything. You know, seeing Gareth resting from her many injuries now, I can clearly see that I fucked up. I had too much fun, so much that I nearly neglected the fact that my master-servant bond had gone completely quiet. Sure, no one died and no major damages were caused, but Gareth is unconscious, Castor is injured, and Saber Alter managed to escape. Heck, that isn't even the complete Saber Alter. Engramenu only sent that small fraction and it managed to deeply injure both Francis and Castor combined, so what does that say about the completed Saber Alter? Will she throw Excalibur Morgan S everywhere like she did in Sakura's route? I sigh. Is she okay? I hear Shiro ask from behind me, and I smile back in response. She's fine. She just needs to sleep and she'll be as good as new. That's good. Shiro smiles too, before he then frowns. But that's not all, is it? My smile grows just a bit darker. We're going to assault the Mato mansion tonight, I say, clenching my fists. We've relaxed enough, and Ingra's starting to act. It's time we move as well. I've already cut the connection between Irisville and the Grail when she was asleep, and since Iliasville is still in Germany, the other possible candidate as the Grail's vessel is Sakura. I see. I hear the sound of clashing swords from my trusted confidant, and my smile grows wider, knowing that he'll definitely join me in my endeavor. Once we attack, we'll attract the attention of every magical being in Fuyuki, I say as I stand to face him. So be ready for anything, okay? Oh, and no dying on me, okay? Shiro smiles as he pats me on the head. Don't worry. We spend some time there, simply basking in each other's presence, knowing that this will be the last moment we'll have before the storm comes. Then we leave the room and separate, heading towards our own destinations to begin our preparations for the assault tonight. Honestly, I feel pretty invincible right now, but I won't get conceited, knowing that such confidence will only lead to a slow and insidious death. So I'm checking on my armor and weapons, making sure they're in check and I'm not missing anything. I won't be casting any magecraft, since I want to save them for the inevitable fight later. I also meet up with Francis to tell her of the incoming fight tonight, and as expected, she agrees. We hold a small talk to briefly discuss just what each of us can do, with her explaining the mechanics of her guns and her ship while I explain my powers. That I did tell her of my massive prana pool and my ability to directly manipulate prana, along with my Thunderer and Mystic Eyes, but I withheld telling her about my noble phantasm and my more powerful skills. Just in case she gets captured and my skills are leaked, you know? What? It's a possibility. Anyways, now that I've briefed with Francis, I'm basically done. Castor and Waver already know of my plan, so they won't be shocked and the Mato mansion suddenly goes up in smokes. Gareth will join if she wakes up before we go, though I doubt that'll happen seeing how weakened she was. I've left Saber and Kiritsugu out from this operation as well, since I fear that Kiritsugu's recent recovery will only lead to Saber being weakened, and with Zoken being kinda an unknown piece right now, I don't want to risk it. And Gilgamesh, well, I somehow feel like she'll know what happens either way. Now, all I need to do is wait for night to roll by, and it'll be time to begin our mission, one that will surely lead towards the end of this fourth Holy Grail War. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.